My name is Victoria and Brennan. I'm 29 years old, and exactly 47 minutes after my father's casket was lowered into the ground, my stepmother ordered me to leave the property while the family lawyer stood watching with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You don't belong here anymore," Brenda hissed, her perfectly manicured hand gripping my arm hard enough to leave marks. "This is family only." Before I could respond, Mr. Patterson, Dad's attorney of 15 years, cleared his throat and said something that made Brenda's face go white. "Mrs. Brennan, you might want to reconsider. Legally speaking, she owns everything you're wearing right now." The silence that followed was deafening. I had no idea what he meant. I'd been blocked from seeing Dad for months, kept in the dark about everything. But the look on Brenda's face told me something had shifted dramatically. Her words still hit like ice water, though, especially considering I'd spent $12,847.63 of my own money on the funeral she was now treating as her exclusive event. "What are you talking about?" Brenda demanded, her voice sharp. Patterson simply said, "We should discuss this privately. All of us. Right now." The worst part about that moment wasn't the confusion or Brenda's cruelty. I'd grown accustomed to both over the 6 years since Dad married her. The worst part was watching my half-brother Colin, all of 19 years old, smirk from behind her shoulder while adjusting his new Rolex, completely oblivious to the fact that everything was about to change. Before I explain what happened in that devastating meeting that followed, let me know where you're viewing from, and hit subscribe if you've ever been made to feel like a stranger at your own parents' funeral. To really understand why Brenda felt entitled to erase me from my father's life and legacy, and why Patterson's words would prove to be the turning point in everything, you'd have to go back 7 years to when Dad first brought her home. I was 22, fresh out of college with my business degree, working my first real job at a marketing firm in Portland. Dad was 51, a successful commercial real estate developer who'd been widowed for 3 years after my mom died from complications during what should have been routine surgery. I'd watched him grieve Mom properly, taking his time, seeing a therapist, slowly rebuilding his life. Then Brenda appeared at one of his property showings, a petite blonde with strategically vulnerable stories about her recent divorce and her struggling teenage son who just needed a stable father figure. She was 37 then, 14 years younger than Dad, and she played him like a finely tuned instrument. Their relationship moved at lightning speed. Within 3 months, she'd moved into the house I grew up in, the home filled with my mother's memory. Within 6 months, Colin had his own room, my childhood bedroom, actually, complete with all my stuffed animals donated to Goodwill without anyone asking me. Within 8 months, they were engaged. I tried to be supportive. I really did. Dad seemed happy, or at least less lonely, and I told myself that's what mattered. My best friend Adriana warned me during a wine night at her apartment, spreading printouts of public records across her coffee table. "Victoria," I looked into her. "That amicable divorce she talks about? She took her ex-husband for everything he had. The struggling single mom act. Her ex was paying $4,283 a month in child support until Colin turned 18 last year. Dad's a grown man," I'd said, defensive. "He can make his own choices." "Sure," Adriana replied. "But you should protect yourself. Document everything." I didn't listen then. I should have. The wedding was small, tasteful, and completely void of anything related to my mother. No photos of her, no acknowledgement that Dad had been married before, nothing. When I gently suggested including one picture of Mom in the reception slideshow, she and Dad had been together for 18 years before she died, Brenda shut me down immediately. "This is about our future, not his past," she said with a tight smile. "I'm sure you understand. Colin's transformation from troubled teen to entitled prince happened gradually at first, then all at once. Dad paid for his private school tuition, $32 for $100 a year. Dad bought him a BMW for his 17th birthday, $47, $650 sticker price. Dad funded his semester abroad in Europe when he barely maintained a 2.1 GPA, spending $18,200 on what was essentially an extended vacation. Meanwhile, I was still paying off my student loans from the state school I'd attended because Dad said it would build character for me to have skin in the game. The inequality wasn't just financial. It was emotional, spatial, fundamental. Family dinners became showcases for Colin's mediocre achievements, while my actual accomplishments, promotions, successful campaigns, anything, were met with distracted nods before conversation pivoted back to Colin's latest interest or Brenda's remodeling plans for the house. "Your father and I are thinking of converting the library," Brenda announced one Sunday. The library was where Mom used to read to me every night, where her collection of first edition mysteries still lined the shelves. "Into what?" I asked carefully. "A home gym for Colin. He's very serious about his fitness now." Mom's books ended up in boxes in the garage. I rescued what I could when they weren't looking, smuggling my mother's treasures out like a thief in my own childhood home. That was 37 hardcover books I managed to save before Brenda had the rest donated without telling me. The real shift happened 3 years into their marriage when Dad revised his will. I only found out by accident when his attorney, Mr. Patterson, called my cell phone by mistake thinking it was Dad's number. We had similar contact entries in his phone. "Just confirming our 2 p.m. appointment tomorrow for the estate planning revision," Patterson's voice said on my voicemail. "Mrs. Brennan indicated you wanted to make some substantial changes to the beneficiary structure." Mrs. Brennan. He meant Brenda, of course. Not me, the actual Brennan by birth. I called Dad directly that evening. "Are you changing your will?" There was a long pause. "Brenda thinks it's important that Colin is provided for." "What about me, Dad?" "You're doing well on your own, sweetheart. You don't need help like Colin does." That sentence gutted me. Colin didn't need help. He had help forced upon him in the form of every opportunity and advantage money could buy. He'd never worked a real job, never faced a consequence, never been told no. But somehow, in Dad's recalibrated reality, I was the self-sufficient one who could fend for herself while Colin required protecting. Over the following months, I watched Brenda systematically erase my mother's presence and my own from Dad's life. The family photos on the mantel got rearranged, fewer pictures of me, more of Colin. Holiday traditions Mom had established were replaced with Brenda's preferences. Dad's annual contribution to the scholarship fund in Mom's name quietly stopped. "We need to be fiscally responsible," Brenda explained when I asked about it. "Colin's college expenses are substantial." Colin was attending community college on a part-time basis. His expenses were minimal. But Brenda had convinced Dad that every resource needed to flow toward her son, and Dad had apparently decided that loving his new wife meant prioritizing her child over his own. Adriana watched this unfold with increasing alarm. "You need to have a serious conversation with your dad," she urged during one of our standing Thursday dinners. Without Brenda present, just you and him. I tried. God knows I tried. But Brenda had positioned herself as gatekeeper to Dad's time and attention. Suggestions of father-daughter dinners were met with, "We already have plans that night," or, "Your father's been so tired lately, he really needs rest." My calls to his cell phone increasingly went to voicemail, while Colin apparently had unfettered access. The breaking point in our relationship came during what should have been a celebration. I'd been promoted to senior marketing director at my firm, a huge achievement at 27 with a salary increase to $87,300 annually. I invited Dad to the celebration dinner my company was hosting. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," he said warmly when I called with the news. "Text me the details." The night of the dinner, he never showed. I called 3 times, straight to voicemail. I sent texts, no response. I gave my acceptance speech to a room full of colleagues and superiors with an empty chair at my reserved table where my father should have been sitting. I found out later, through Colin's Instagram story, that Dad had been at Colin's intramural basketball game that night. Not even a real game, an intramural recreational league where Colin mostly sat on the bench. That's what took priority over my career milestone. When I confronted Dad the next day, his excuse was hollow. "Brenda said you'd understand. The game was scheduled first." "I told you about my dinner 6 weeks ago, Dad." "Well, Colin only mentioned his game last week, and he really wanted me there." The unspoken hierarchy couldn't have been clearer. Colin's last-minute wants superseded my long-planned needs. Brenda's version of reality took precedence over actual facts. And I was expected to understand, to be the bigger person, to not make waves. "You're changing," I told him, fighting back tears. "Or maybe Brenda's changing you." His face hardened. "Brenda is my wife. If you can't respect her, maybe we need some space. Space. That's what he called the growing distance between us, as if it were mutual, as if I were the one pulling away. The final 18 months before Dad's death were marked by increasingly rare contact. Birthday calls became birthday texts, became sometimes remembering my birthday. Holiday invitations came with the caveat that I needed to be civil to Brenda, as if I were the problem. Family events felt like hostage situations where I was tolerated rather than welcomed. I learned about Dad's diagnosis thirdhand. Not from him, not from Brenda, but from his business partner Richard, who ran into me at a coffee shop and assumed I knew. "I'm so sorry about your father's cancer," Richard said, touching my arm sympathetically. "How's he handling the treatment?" My brain short-circuited. "What cancer?" Richard's face went pale. "Oh God, you didn't know." I thought, "I'm so sorry, Victoria. I assumed family would know first." Dad had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He'd known for 3 weeks. Brenda had known. Cullen had known. Dad's business partners knew. His golf buddies knew. I, his only biological child, had been deliberately kept in the dark. When I called him, devastated and angry, Brenda answered his phone. "He's resting and can't be disturbed. He has cancer and didn't tell me." "He didn't want to worry you," she said smoothly. "You're so busy with your career. Put him on the phone. Now. The doctor says stress is bad for his condition. Your attitude right now is exactly the kind of stress he doesn't need." She hung up. When I tried to call back, I was blocked. I showed up at the house the next morning, the house where I'd grown up, where my mother had died, where my childhood memories lived in every corner. Brenda answered the door but didn't invite me in. "He doesn't want to see you right now," she said. "That's not true. You're not letting him see me. I'm protecting him from negativity during treatment. If you cared about him at all, you'd respect his wishes. Let me talk to him." My voice rose, desperate. Cullen appeared behind her. "Mom said you need to leave. You're upsetting everyone." "Cullen, this is between me and my father." "Our father," he corrected with a smug smile. "And he wants what's best for his family. That means peace and quiet, not your drama." I left because I had no choice, not because I wanted to. Over the following weeks, I sent cards, emails, texts, all unanswered. I sent flowers to the house. They were refused at the door. I contacted Dad's doctor. HIPAA prevented any information sharing without the patient's consent, and apparently Dad had listed only Brenda and Colin as approved contacts. Adriana helped me consult with an attorney about my rights. "Unfortunately," the lawyer explained, "unless your father is declared incompetent, his spouse has significant legal authority over medical decisions and visitation. If he's supporting her claims that you're unwelcome." "He wouldn't," I insisted. "She's manipulating him." But I couldn't prove it. And as Dad's health deteriorated over the next 4 months, I remained on the outside, getting occasional updates from Richard and other business associates who took pity on me. The call about Dad's death came from his lawyer, Mr. Patterson, not from Brenda. "Miss Brennan, I'm very sorry to inform you that your father passed away this morning at 6:23 a.m. The funeral is scheduled for Saturday at Riverside Memorial. Did he ask for me at the end?" I needed to know. Patterson's pause told me everything. Mrs. Brennan managed his final days very carefully. I hung up and cried for 3 hours straight. Adriana came over, held me, said nothing because there was nothing to say. My father had died surrounded by people who'd known him for less than 7 years, while I, who'd known him my entire life, had been deliberately excluded from his final moments. The funeral planning was another nightmare. Brenda's assistant called with logistics, treating me like a distant relative rather than the deceased daughter. "Mrs. Brennan has arranged everything. She's asked that you not try to speak at the service. It's my father's funeral. Mrs. Brennan is the widow and primary decision-maker. She's concerned that your emotional state might disrupt the service's dignity." My emotional state? As if grief at my father's funeral was somehow inappropriate. I hired my own lawyer then, Patricia Levine, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in estate disputes. "Don't sign anything Brenda gives you," Patricia advised. "Don't agree to anything verbally, and document every interaction." The funeral itself was a grotesque performance. Brenda wore designer black. I recognized the label from a boutique where dresses started at $3,200. Colin wore a new suit and that Rolex, looking bored during the service. The eulogy Brenda delivered painted Dad as a man who'd found true happiness in his second marriage, barely mentioning my mother except as his late first wife. I sat in the third row. Brenda had assigned seating that placed her, Colin, and her extended family in the first two rows. My mother's family, what was left of it, sat with me. Aunt Linda, Mom's sister, squeezed my hand throughout the service. "This is wrong," she whispered. "Your mother would be horrified." After the burial, at the reception held at Dad's house, Brenda played gracious hostess while I stood near the food table feeling like a ghost at my own father's funeral. People offered condolences. "I'm so sorry for your loss," but they said it to Brenda first, longer, with more feeling. That's when it happened. The moment that would change everything. Mr. Patterson approached me quietly, his expression grave. "Miss Brennan, I need to speak with you and Mrs. Brennan. Privately. Right now." Brenda overheard and her eyes narrowed. "Lionel, this is hardly the time." "It's exactly the time," he said firmly. "Both of you. The study. Colin should be present as well." Something in his tone made even Brenda comply. Colin followed us, champagne in hand despite being underage, looking curious rather than concerned. In Dad's study, my grandfather's study, really, with that antique desk that had been in our family for generations, Patterson opened his briefcase with deliberate precision. He didn't sit. Neither did any of us. "Mrs. Brennan," he began, his voice carrying a weight I'd never heard from him before. "Earlier today, you made a statement to Miss Brennan about ownership of property. You said, and I quote, 'Everything you're wearing belongs to you now.'" Brenda lifted her chin. "That's correct. As Richard's widow, I inherit." "That pearl necklace Miss Brennan is wearing," Patterson interrupted, pointing to my mother's necklace, "was part of a trust established by Richard and Janet Brennan 28 years ago. It never became marital property. Legally speaking, Mrs. Brennan, Victoria owns that necklace, the clothes on your back that Richard purchased, the wedding ring you're wearing that was bought with marital funds, and quite possibly this house we're standing in." The room went completely silent. "That's ridiculous," Brenda said, but her voice wavered. "Is it?" Patterson pulled out a thick file. "Your husband came to see me 6 weeks before he died. He was very ill, but he was completely lucid. He wanted to make changes to his estate plan that would protect Victoria's inheritance rights. He didn't complete the paperwork. I believe you discouraged him from doing so, but he left very specific instructions. He handed me an envelope. 'Miss Brennan, your father wanted you to have this immediately upon his death before the will was read. I apologize for not giving it to you sooner, but Mrs. Brennan insisted on reading the will privately first.' My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter, 3 pages in Dad's increasingly shaky handwriting, and a small key. "What is this?" Brenda demanded. "Read it aloud," Patterson said to me, his voice gentle but firm. "She should hear this." I read, my voice breaking. "My dearest Victoria, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I suspect I've left things in a terrible state. I need you to know that the distance between us these past years has been the greatest regret of my life. I was weak when I should have been strong. I let Brenda control access to you because it was easier than fighting her, and I hate myself for it. The will as it stands is not what I truly want. I tried to change it 6 weeks ago, but couldn't bring myself to face Brenda's reaction in my weakened state. I'm ashamed of that cowardice. What I want you to know, the business partnership agreement supersedes will provisions. Richard has right of first refusal on my shares, but I've instructed him in a separate letter to offer them to you at fair value with generous payment terms. Don't let Brenda sell them out from under you. These shares are currently valued at $183,400 and generate quarterly distributions. The house was purchased with your mother before we married. We set up a specific trust for the property, designating it would pass to our children, meaning you. I never formally dissolved that trust despite Brenda's pressure. Patterson can verify this. The trust documents are in the safe deposit box at First National, Box 4721. The key is hidden in my desk. The investment account, ending in 7834, was never added to the marital assets. It's been in your name since you were 18. Your mother and I set it up as a college fund, but you got scholarships. I've been adding to it quarterly for 11 years. Last I checked, It had $247,683.19. The statements go to a P.O. Box, number 4721 at the Riverside Post Office. The key is with this letter. I documented everything these last years. Brenda's manipulation, her pressuring me to cut you out, text messages where she badmouthed you, even recordings of our arguments. It's all on the flash drive attached to this key ring. I was too weak to fight her while alive, but I won't let her erase you in death. I know I failed you when you needed me most. I let love for a woman cloud my judgment about what really mattered. You are my blood, my daughter, the best part of your mother living on. I'm so proud of who you've become despite my failures as a father. Don't let Brenda rewrite history. Fight for what's rightfully yours, not out of greed, but because that's what your mother would have wanted. She made me promise, before she died, to always take care of you. I broke that promise in life. Don't let me break it in death too. The pearl necklace you're wearing, it was your mother's, and it was placed in trust for you when you turned 16. Brenda has no claim to it, no matter what she says. Everything your mother owned, all her personal effects I told you were donated. They're hidden in the house. The master bedroom closet, behind the false wall on the left side. I couldn't bear to destroy them, but I was too weak to give them to you while Brenda was watching. I love you, sweetheart. I'm sorry I didn't show it better when it mattered. Don't let her win. Dad. By the time I finished reading, tears were streaming down my face. Brenda's face had cycled through white to red to purple. This is manipulation, she hissed. He was on medication, confused. He was completely competent, Patterson said coldly. I have medical documentation from his oncologist confirming his mental state at the time of our meeting. I also have the recordings he mentioned. Would you like to hear them, Mrs. Brennan? Perhaps the one where you told Colin, and I quote, "When's the old man finally going to kick it? I'm tired of waiting for my inheritance." Colin's face went ashen. You recorded us. Brenda's voice rose to a shriek. Your husband recorded you, Patterson corrected. 6 months of audio files, all time-stamped and verified. Your discussions about cutting Victoria out. Your complaints about having to deal with his first family baggage. Your exact words to Colin, just be patient and keep playing the devoted son. Victoria is already cut out, so it's all ours once he's gone. The room felt like it was spinning. I gripped the edge of Dad's desk, my desk now, apparently. This won't hold up in court, Brenda said desperately. It's his word against mine. It's his documented evidence against your claims, Patterson replied. And there's more. The funeral expenses. Miss Brennan paid $12,847.63 out of her own funds for a service she wasn't even allowed to plan. Mrs. Brennan, you told her she had no right to make decisions, yet you allowed her to pay. That could be construed as fraud. I didn't ask her to pay for anything. You didn't refuse the payment either. And you accepted it while simultaneously telling her she had no place in this family. Patterson turned to me. Miss Brennan, in the desk drawer, there's a hidden compartment. Your father showed me where it was. I found it exactly where Dad described. A false bottom under the left drawer that released with a specific pressure point. Inside, a small key attached to a flash drive, some old photos of Mom, and another envelope marked evidence. What you do with this is your choice, Patterson said. But I want to be very clear about the legal situation. The house trust, if valid, means Victoria has significant ownership claim. The investment account is solely in her name and not part of the estate. The business shares are protected by partnership agreement. Mrs. Brennan, your inheritance may be substantially less than you believed. Brenda looked like she might be sick. How much less? The will leaves you and Colin the liquid assets from the estate, approximately $1,237,000 after taxes and debts. But the house is tied up in trust litigation, the business shares go to Victoria, and the investment account was never yours to claim. Your actual inheritance might be closer to $500,000 split between you and Colin once legal fees are paid. That's not fair. Colin burst out. She doesn't deserve any of it. Fair. The word escaped my mouth like a bullet. You got private school, a BMW, semester abroad, every advantage money could buy. I paid for my own education, my own car, my own life. And then I paid $12,847.63 for a funeral at Dad's service that you couldn't even be bothered to look sad at. You're just bitter, Brenda spat. You've always been jealous that Richard chose us. He didn't choose you, I said, my voice steady despite the rage flowing through my veins. He was lonely, and you took advantage of that. And then you spent 6 years systematically erasing my mother and me from his life. But you couldn't erase everything. He made sure of that. I looked at Patterson. What do I need to do? First, secure the documents from the safety deposit box. Second, access the investment account. Third, we'll need to file paperwork regarding the house trust. And fourth, he paused significantly, we should discuss whether you want to pursue legal action regarding the recordings and evidence of undue influence. Meaning we could contest the will entirely based on evidence that your father was manipulated and pressured while gravely ill. We might be able to revert to an earlier version of the will where you inherited 50% of everything. Brenda's knees actually buckled. She grabbed the back of a chair. You can't. I can, I said. The question is whether I will. Patricia Levine would later tell me this was a pivotal decision point. I could fight for everything, drag Dad's memory through legal proceedings, spend years in court battles. Or I could take what was clearly mine and walk away. I chose the middle path. Here's my offer, I said, looking Brenda in the eye. I take the investment account, the business shares, all of Mom's personal property wherever it's hidden in this house, and I'll drop any claim to the house itself. You can live here, sell it, whatever. I also want immunity from any claims about the funeral expenses. Consider that my final gift to Dad. And in return, Patterson asked, Brenda drops any contest to the business shares and investment account. Clean break. And I looked at Colin. Neither of you ever contact me again. No calls, no emails, no showing up at my work. You wanted me out of the family? Congratulations. You got your wish. I need to consult my attorney, Brenda said weakly. You have 48 hours, Patricia said, appearing in the doorway. I texted her earlier, and she'd been waiting outside. After that, we filed to contest the entire will based on undue influence, and this gets very ugly, very public, and very expensive for everyone. The settlement was reached 36 hours later. Brenda kept the house and the liquid assets from Dad's estate, $1,237,000 split with Colin, as the will specified. I kept the investment account, $247,683.19. The business shares, valued at $183,400, and all of Mom's personal property. Most importantly, the settlement included ironclad non-contact provisions. They couldn't reach out to me, badmouth me publicly, or interfere with my inheritance in any way. The day I went back to collect Mom's things, Patricia and Adriana came with me. We found the false wall in the master closet exactly where Dad described. Behind it, 14 boxes of Mom's belongings. Her clothes, her jewelry box, her photo albums, her collection of first edition mysteries, even some of my childhood artwork that Brenda had claimed was thrown away. You kept them hidden for 6 years, I said to Brenda, who was watching from the doorway with barely contained fury. I was going to deal with them eventually, she said stiffly. You kept them because destroying them felt too cruel even for you, but you couldn't stand the thought of me having them. So you just hid them away like they were shameful. We loaded everything into Adriana's SUV in my car. Every dress, every book, every scrap of my mother that Brenda had tried to erase. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror at the house I'd grown up in. I never went back. 1 year later, my life is unrecognizable in the best possible way. I used the investment account money to pay off my student loans, all $43,600 of them, and put a down payment on a cozy townhouse in Portland's Pearl District. The business shares generate quarterly distributions, averaging $11,200, giving me passive income that allowed me to leave my marketing job and start my own consulting firm. I named it Janet Brennan Consulting, after my mother. My first client was Richard's company, which felt beautifully circular. He'd honored Dad's request and sold me the business shares with generous payment terms, becoming an unexpected ally in the aftermath. The townhouse is filled with Mom's things. Her books line every shelf. Her jewelry sits in my dresser. Her photo is on every wall. Sometimes Adriana comes over, and we drink wine surrounded by all these pieces of a woman she never met but feels like she knows through the stories I tell. I heard through Aunt Linda that Brenda sold the house after 8 months. Apparently, she'd taken out a home equity loan right after the settlement, $280,000 that she'd invested in some scheme Colin promised would triple their money. It didn't. They lost most of it. Colin moved to California and hasn't contacted his mother in 6 months, according to Linda's sources. The Devoted Son Act ended the moment Brenda's money started running out. I felt nothing when I heard. Not satisfaction, not sympathy. Just nothing. They'd made their choices and I'd made mine. Sometimes I think about Dad in that letter. His regret felt real, but it came too late. He'd had years to stand up to Brenda, years to choose me, years to honor my mother's memory and the promises they'd made to each other. He chose comfort over courage, and that choice cost him his relationship with his only child. But that final act, the letter, the hidden evidence, the protected accounts, was his way of choosing me when it mattered most. Not in life, where it would have been harder but meant more, but in death, where it was all he had left to give. I've made my peace with it. Some relationships can't be salvaged, and some people won't choose you until they have nothing left to lose. What matters is that I chose myself. I fought for what was mine, not out of greed but out of principle. I refused to be erased. The real inheritance wasn't the money, though that certainly helped rebuild my life. The real inheritance was learning that self-worth can't come from people who are determined to diminish you. That family isn't just biology, it's chosen connection, mutual respect, genuine love. I built a life I'm proud of, surrounded by people who value me. And every morning when I wear my mother's pearl necklace, the one Brenda tried to claim but never could, I'm reminded that some things are worth fighting for, and some people are worth letting go. Have you ever felt erased by your own family? Have you had to fight for your place against someone who wanted you gone? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these experiences is the first step toward healing. The people who truly matter will see your worth, even when the ones who should have never did.